And that is, so to 200, I should say. And that is an opportunity now for the government to recognise that she has a mandate, the Prime Minister. She can go back to Brussels, and she should go back to Brussels, and she should say that the British House of Commons does not accept the democratic consequences of the arrangement that you have imposed in the form of the backstop. It's got to come out. And if we mean it, and if we're determined, then I think we can achieve that.
Determined enough even to stay in the cabinet.
Right. I think I've answered that question. Thank you. Yes, Beth.
Mr. Johnson, we're in a moment of national crisis, and here you are in front of a digger making a naked leadership pitch. Theresa May has won a confidence vote. Why don't you just get behind her and stop undermining her?
Well, actually, what I'm offering is that you're quite right that the Prime Minister has won the confidence vote, and that's terrific. I voted for her, of course, but she has not succeeded, emphatically not succeeded, in getting her deal through Parliament. And as I said just now, it's gone down by a majority of 230. That's unprecedented. It cannot come back. It is an X deal. What is needed now, and that's what I'm trying to do, is humbly and sincerely offer a way forward. We need to get through this, and we can only do it if we have conviction and determination, and we follow the logic of what Brexit was all about. And it's actually a massive opportunity. She needs to go back to Brussels and remove the backstop, or the most pernicious elements of the backstop, the way it locks us in, from the deal. And if she can do that, and if she really means it this time, then we can make progress.
Just one more thing on that matter of supporting her. Would you back Theresa May as Tory leader if she does decide to call a snap election to break the impasse over Brexit? Would you support her?
I think that most people in this country feel that they've had quite enough elections, and I certainly do. What they voted for was to leave the European Union and to take advantage of the opportunities of Brexit. That's what we should all be getting on and supporting.
So you wouldn't support her? Just to be clear, because she said she wouldn't contest another election.
Say again?
Theresa May promised the 22 committee she wouldn't contest another general election as Tory leader, but if she decides to call a snap election, then that might be difficult. Do you think she should stand down?
I think it's highly unlikely that will be the outcome. I think it would be I think a snap election is not the right way through. Why call a snap election when you can just go back to Brussels and make the point that this deal is unacceptable, we want a better one. And it's so overwhelmingly in their interests to do better, and they can. So that's where we should be focusing. Yes.
Peter Saul, BBC News. Mr. Johnson, you've set out your opposition to many of the sort of potential options on the table here. Isn't it true, though, that the parliamentary arithmetic is against you? And even if they were, by some miracle, able to get rid of the backstop, surely a permanent customs union perhaps would be a more pragmatic way forward?
Well, I have to say that I don't think there's any support. The last time I saw that a customs union debated in Parliament, it was voted down, and it was, as you will remember, it was something that was expressly ruled out, not just at the referendum, but at the general election, where everybody campaigned on a manifesto to come out of, or 82% of MPs campaigned on manifesto to come out of the customs union and the single market. So, you can't now stay in the customs union. And it's not true that we've run out of options. As I said, there is a great way ahead. And what is needed now is simply to adjust the withdrawal agreement so as to take out that backstop and the way it restricts Britain's freedom.
But you wouldn't be able to get that through Parliament, would you?
On the contrary, what Parliament has voted for is to come out of the EU on March the 29th. Everybody voted, or huge numbers of MPs voted, to trigger Article 50. That cannot be superseded except by another act of Parliament or another government-sponsored piece of legislation. And it's not going to be. The Prime Minister has clearly ruled it out. And as I said, I think rescinding Article 50 now and telling the British public, after all this hoo-ha, that we've abandoned the project of leaving the European Union would be so utterly pathetic that I do think it would not only cause widespread international dismay, but also it would reinforce people's view that there's some kind of plot going on at Westminster to stop this thing. Because people have voted for it, Parliament voted for it, on March 29th it's going to happen, and that's what the Prime Minister said.
If the Prime Minister were able to...
How many questions are you going to have? I don't mind. You keep going. Go on, all right.
One if I might. Just if the Prime Minister were able to get this deal through on the back of Labour votes, could she stay in the job?
Well, you know, if we had some ham and eggs, we had any eggs. I think rather than exhausting ourselves with these hypotheses about what might or might not happen in Parliament, I think, you know, if you were paying attention to the first 1,500 words of my speech, it was mainly about why we shouldn't waste time pointing the backhoe loader one way when what we wanted to do was turn around the other way and go and remove the obstacles in Brussels rather than trying to sort out what's going on in Parliament. That was the thrust of what I was trying to say. Okay, and I'm going to... Sorry. Yes, sir. I'm going to come to others. Go on.
Boris Johnson, Richard Vernal, Press Association.
Can we do one question each, by the way, folks, just for in the interest of because there might be members of the audience who might want to ask a question. Yeah. I don't mind, but it's the point. JCB is a highly productive company. We are. If you will notice that the factory, the production line has been, the assembly line has been temporarily halted. Go on.
It's all your fault, Boris.
Go on.
I just want to pick you up on something you said just a little while ago, where you said what we need now is humbly and sincerely to offer a way forward. You stood in front of the custard-coloured JCB, the production line's halted, and I know this isn't your constituency. Why not tell Prime Minister yourself rather than get everybody here and tell us, as it were?
Well, it's a very it's a very fair question. I've told the Prime Minister myself many times, as I was saying to Libby, and I thought perhaps it was a good idea to try and tell as many people as possible, since so far I've not been successful in persuading her. But I think she will come round. Yes, Jack.
Mr. Johnson, just to offer another hypothesis about what might happen in Parliament in the coming weeks. Jacob Rees-Mogg said yesterday that if he was forced to choose between Mrs May's deal and staying in the EU, he would choose Mrs May's deal because it would at least mean leaving. Would you make the same choice, or is it never?
What to which?
To her deal.
It's not a choice I wish to have, Jack. It's one of the. There are ways in which I'm afraid the deal on offer is worse than being in the EU. Does everybody understand why? For the reason I gave, that if you tried to come up, normally speaking, if JCB comes up with a brilliant idea and you want to protect yourself from people in Brussels who may want to have to throttle that idea, to strangle it at birth, you have British civil servants around the table in Brussels or British ministers who can speak up for you. We're coming out of the EU, but under these proposals, we would still be run by the EU. So that is a real defect, and the same goes for the trade policy and everything else. I don't want to face that choice. I think what we should be going for is the kind of clean global Brexit that I have advocated. And by the way, the trade terms on which JCB does very well around the world.
I have the microphone.
Yes, come on, you with the microphone.
Lynn Davidson from The Sun. Mr. Johnson, you talk about uniting the country. Could you be the man to unite your party? And very quickly, the DUP have suggested or indicated they may accept a customs union if the dreaded backstop was removed. Would you be happy with that? Well,
I'd have to see what the DUP have said. I saw a report about that. I think that the difficulty with staying in the customs union without any say in it is that you know, as I was saying to Jack Doyle, you're losing a lot of influence and you're not gaining very much. So I don't like that option at all, but I will study carefully what the DUP have to say. And on the first question, all I'm doing really, as I said, is trying to show a way forward. Yes.
Mr. Johnson, Henry Zeppelin from the Times. Alan Duncan said this morning that you have recklessly divided the Conservative Party and created a historic crisis in the UK. He was your deputy as Foreign Secretary for 2 years and clearly doesn't think you're fit for a leadership role. Why should anyone hear?
Well, because what I'm, with great respect to Alan and indeed anybody else, all I'm trying to do is bring people together on what I think is the most sensible way forward. And I genuinely think this is the answer. I think it's a great shame that we've gone down the wrong track, and there are various reasons why that happened after the referendum result. We had a moment when perhaps it could have gone right at Lancaster House. We had an election that didn't go entirely according to plan. And we are where we are. And I think, however, that we should be confident and we should be optimistic, and we can still get a great deal if we try and if we mean it. Yes, sir.
Dan Sarah from The Guardian. What happens if Parliament rules out a no deal? It seems to be a majority of Parliament against a no deal. Would that force you, if Theresa May can't get rid of the backstop, to support her? Because otherwise the option would be staying in the EU.
Well, how do you rule out no deal except by having a deal? And it's a logically difficult thing to do. I think that there will be a deal. I think that, of course, we are Britain, the EU, run by highly intelligent, sensitive people who understand democracy and who respond to the needs of their constituents, and particularly businesses. And they are not going to want to exit with a bristling palisade of sharpened stakes in the form of tariffs on either side of the channel. That is not going to happen. Absolutely not. And so, when people talk about that kind of no deal, I just don't think it's remotely credible. What could happen is that you could have the kind of agreement that I described. You could have a standstill, you could have a period in which you agree to keep things frozen as they are now until such time as you've negotiated a free trade deal. And that is a very live possibility, and that's the way we should go.
So we'll leave Boris Johnson